Hello everyone. Thank you so much for being a part of this masterclass. I'm Scarlett and I'm going to be taking you through a budgeting masterclass. We're going to be learning a ton about what budgets are, and I just want to give a shout out to all of you who are joining live with me, and then a big shout out to everyone who is joining later on YouTube to learn about budgeting. So let's go ahead and get started. So in this budgeting masterclass, I'm going to help you learn what budgets are. We're going to be talking about how to create your own budget, and we're also going to be talking about how to have a successful budget. This honestly is a great place to start for all of you who are new to budgeting, who have an interest in budgeting, maybe who have tried one or two times. This will give you a ton of just the foundational information you need to know as a beginner to get your budget started. So for those of you who are joined with me live here, I want on this next slide for you to type down in the chat if these sound right to you. Okay, so first off, have you tried budgeting before? I mean, that's the first thing that is most important to realize, okay? A lot of you probably have never tried budgeting before. You've heard of it. Maybe you've been a little apprehensive or scared of the thought of it. But in reality, some of you have likely tried it but failed, okay? I'm the type of person where I usually will start something, a few days later, I'm done, right? And so if you're one of those, type yes down in the comments down below. Are you someone who has kind of out of control spending? You go on spending sprees where for a few days, few weeks, you spend a whole bunch, but then you feel guilty and you kind of stop spending, but you don't really have control over it, right? Are you someone who has a dream of potentially quitting your job one day, having a lot of money? We all have totally different dreams or aspirations when it comes to this one. But if you're someone who maybe wants to start a business, are you potentially someone who has searched for Google or on Google or Pinterest for budgeting printables, different money printables, trackers, whatnot? Also, are you someone who has felt frustrated at just not understanding how personal finance works? Okay, I've been there for sure. Or if you're just someone who just wants some guidance of getting out of debt, getting some control over your money. Okay, if you're someone like that, I feel you. All right, because hey, I'm Scarlett and I am here to help you learn about money and investing. I am someone where I have created a website, I've created my social media, I've created a huge platform to help women, typically in their 20s and their 30s, to gain control of their money, learn how money works, and to totally conquer your money goals. Okay, so I love helping women, right? That's kind of my whole passion. And throughout my journey, I have paid off over 70 grand of debt, and I have created 38 Investing, which originally has become, really was my website where I helped women along my own journey. So as I was paying off debt myself, I had created this goal of retiring by 38. That's where 38 comes from. In regard to that, I learned how to invest, and so I wanted to retire early, right? And so that's kind of the basis of that. But throughout my social media, throughout my website, you'll find hundreds, countless of articles, videos, and helpful information to get you from point A to point Z in regard to your financial journey, meaning learning about money, conquering your money, saving, spending less, whatever it be, okay? And I have helped many thousands of women across the world learn about money and, again, really just help them along their own personal finance journeys. So I have also been featured on a lot of different places. I'm not just someone random off the internet. These are just a few of the recent ones, but Frugal Expat, Hey You Finance, BuzzFeed, a few of those, for example, that my story and that I have helped collaborate and contribute to. Okay, so the basis behind all this, and I know you came here to learn about budgeting, right? But the basis of all this is to learn about the free life movement. And the free life movement is this movement that I've essentially helped create, right? This is the movement for women in their 20s, 30s, and it doesn't matter your age, but that's kind of the majority of women that I help, where essentially I teach you going from, again, point A to point Z, where we learn the very foundational basics, vocab, right? what is debt, what are assets, and then everything to how do you invest your money to essentially live financially free, to be having money coming in every month so you can quit your job. I mean, all sorts of wild, complex things, and the very basics, okay? So I take you through this whole journey. This book here, the Woman's Money Playbook, is essentially this book that I created that will take you along that journey. It has a ton of fun printables and activities, and I just included it here because it's along this free life movement. It's part of this journey. And so I do want to let you know that this web masterclass that I am going through with you today is in conjunction with this playbook. So you'll get a little bit of hints in regard to the information that I give you that you can see within this playbook. And we'll talk a little bit about that later on as well, so you can just get some more information if you are interested. If you do watch this whole masterclass and if you stay on live with me this whole time, then you get a really exclusive opportunity to get this playbook of your own. I will give you a discount if you stay on. So it's just kind of my thank you for spending some time with me. So I am going to do a giveaway to give away this free workbook of mine. And so all I need you to do is on your device, all you have to do is screenshot this screen, and you can post it on Instagram. That's usually where I can find it easiest, or you can post it on Twitter for a chance to win one of these workbooks for free. It's over $47 that I typically charge for it, but you would get it for free. So you'd be part of this today. So be sure to do that if you are interested. But first, let me talk to you a little bit about my own personal story, what got me here, so that you can better understand the purpose of the whole budgeting aspect of this masterclass. So I grew up, probably like most of you, not really understanding much about money. I didn't have parents who had explained money to me, who showed me how investing works, how saving. It really was just about work all day, do your 8 to 5, and then spend your money. Like, that's all I understood about money. So I went to high school, went to college, never really got a job. When I did get a job, I earned and I spent, right? Because I didn't know otherwise. And so unfortunately what happened, I did accumulate a lot of student loans. I did learn a little bit about money by then. I took a Dave Ramsey Financial Priest University course, if any of you ladies have taken that. And I started learning about money and I was blown away, right? I actually got terrified at the thought of $70,000. It was a little over 70 grand that I got myself into debt to. I was like, wow, this is kind of horrible, starting out my 20s and I'm in $70,000 of debt. Now I recognize a lot of you may have way more than that. But in general, $70,000 is a pretty healthy amount of debt for your average 22-year-old, right? So with that, I actually set out to create 38 Investing, which is my website that I mentioned earlier. And through there, I set a goal. And my goal was to achieve financial freedom by the age of 38. From there, I then started learning everything I could. I listened to podcasts and read books. I did everything, from watching YouTube videos and watching interviews to find out what I can do to expedite this process so I could pay off my debt as fast as possible. So I really learned as much as I could throughout my 3 years of graduate school that I accumulated the $70,000 of debt. I was able to pay off $20,000 of it. And so that was really impressive considering it's a full-time school. So I had to work side hustles and I had to work outside of school time to be able to pay off that money. So that was really awesome. But after school, I was able to then pay off the rest of the money with some really aggressive, what Dave Ramsey would call gazelle intensity, but I worked over 20 hours of side hustles a week on top of a normal job, and it was aggressive. It was very intense, it was very hard, but I learned so much. And the reason I say all this is because through those experiences, I always updated my blog, my Instagram, and my social media, and I have been sharing with women what has been successful, what has been working, what hasn't worked, what I have been found to be the best things to do, how to track your money. I mean, hundreds of articles that I've written and helped women over the past handful of years. So just letting you know that I have been in your shoes. I know what it's like, but just know that in order to change your future, you have to change today. So the fact that you are here today means so much to me, and it really should mean a lot to you. It means that you're taking time out of your day to learn, to grow, and to change, because your future is not going to change unless you change something today. And budgeting is one of the most foundational, basic things that you can start with your money in order to change your financial future. So do realize and just stay confident in this. It is possible. I had no financial education beforehand. I really had no idea anything about investing, anything about any complex financial thing. It was completely brand new to me. And if it's brand new to you, then good. Then I can help you out, right? Anyone can achieve this. You can pay off your debt. You can have control over your money. And you can, if your goal is to eventually quit your job, if your goal is to eventually start a business, like, it is completely achievable. And I am just here to tell you that I've been there and I know you can do it. And so throughout this whole experience, I really figured out what I needed in life compared to what I wanted. And the reason I mention this is because with budgeting, you really have to figure out what you want in life versus what you need in life. And a lot of times with a budget, it's not just a temporary thing. I still use a budget even though I'm debt-free. I still use a budget in order to allocate my funds so that I can invest, so I can give to my community, so I can grow my business, all those things, right? It is important to establish a budget now so that later on you can really have a successful budget. So throughout my experience, I'm almost done here with this part, I did learn how to create a really easy budget, okay? So that's really important. Budgets can get complicated, as we'll talk a little bit today. But I also really learned how to have complete control over my financial future, which is very important to have some confidence in your future. Being a woman who understands her money is also really important to me, because there's so few women out there who truly care about their money and their finances and their future. A lot of times we just give it to our husbands or have our spouse do it. And I think it takes everyone as a team to learn and to grow and to really conquer your money goals. So additionally, something very important is I learned how to make effective short-term, long-term goals. So the reason I mention all this is because these are just some basic things that I can help you out with, and that I have learned how to really do it efficiently, and I'm here to help you out with so you can do it too. With that said, my goal for this masterclass is to really equip you with everything you need to create and practice your new budget. And are you ready to begin your financially free life? So like I said, in regard to my free life warriors, the women who have been kind of trying to really create a free life, a life of freedom, I'm excited for you to be a part of this journey. So let's get started. So in regard to this masterclass, we kind of have 4 steps to learn about budgets. Step 1, we're going to be discussing budgets, right? What is a budget? Why are budgets important? Some examples of budgets. And that's where we are right now. In step 2, we're going to be exploring and learning how to start a budget. I'm talking about different apps and services, different ways to actually start your budget. Then we're going to be talking about the process of budgeting, different budgeting methods, for example. And then step 4, I'm going to be discussing different success habits, different ways that you can really conquer your budget, as I like to say, and just be successful with it so that you have the motivation to keep going, get over what we call the 3-month hump, and just to be able to kicking butt with your money goals. Let's begin. I want to start this off with a quick little quiz. And so for any of you who are live with me, you can put your answers down in the comments below, but I promise it is really easy. So let's begin here. The first question that everyone needs to ask is, what is budgeting? So many people, I'm pretty sure everyone has heard the word budget, but not a lot of people actually understand what a budget is if you haven't done one yourself. The first answer is honestly not really sure. Second answer is a plan for your future money. 3, a way to stop spending, ? 4, a list of things I buy, I think. So these are some potential responses. But here's the deal. A budget is simply a way to plan for how you'll spend your money in the future. That is essentially just the basic way of thinking. If you have money now, you're putting your money written down on a way of how you plan on spending it. So the correct answer was number 2 for any of you down in the comments. So the second question that we have here is, why have a budget? Obviously, you guys have spent your whole lives potentially not having a budget. So why start now? What's the point, right? So let's look. Number 1, I guess I should spend less. Number 2, so my husband stopped spending. Definitely talk to a handful of women who think they just need a budget just to control their family's spending. Number 3, I'm not convinced yet, not sure. Or number 4, to have control over my money. So in regard to a budget really can help you control where each dollar goes. Okay. This also helps you prevent overspending, and it helps you pay off your debt. So everyone has a different reason for their budget, whether it is because they do a lot of overspending, or maybe it's because they really, really want to save up for something special, a home, a vacation, a wedding. Maybe it's that you just want to learn how to allocate your funds for a big event or for work, or let's say that you have a side business you're starting and you want to know how to separate your funds. But overall, it is to control your money and to prevent overspending. So let's go into the budgeting basics. So to begin a budget, really the basic first step that you need to do is determine your after-tax income. And this includes your family overall. So if you're married, or if you have children who potentially are teenagers and also work and bring income, whatever it be. Figure out your after-tax income. Now, of course, a lot of you could be working per hour. You could be working and earning income every other week, or you could be paid monthly. This is very important because a lot of people have budgets that are per month budgets, essentially, and that's honestly really what's most recommended. But what you need to do is look at your income and really look at the past 3 months. That's typically what people recommend. And look at how much money that your family overall brought in. Because then the next step takes a little bit longer, and I know it can be a little cumbersome at first, but it really gets so much easier once you've done it. The second step is to determine your expenses. So the first step, again, was to figure out how much money you brought in. The second step is figuring out how much money that goes out, how much money you spend. People spend money on everything, okay? We spend money on living, so our mortgage or our rent. We spend money on our food, whether it be going out to eat, groceries, Grubhub. We spend money on entertainment and fun. We spend money on so many things. So what I want you to do is look back on your transactions, whether it be at your checkbook, look back on your credit card app, go look at your last month's statements on your credit and debit cards. Wherever it is, whatever it is, figure out how much you spent. Now, as I recommended on step 1, on step 2, I recommend you do at least 3 months worth. That way, when you set up your budget for the next month, you have an idea as to how much you're going to spend, right? So that's the whole point. If you knew you spent $3,000 last month on everything combined, and you spent $3,000 in the month before, and the month before, you can very easily expect to spend 3 months on this next month. But if it's really scattered, that's important to know too, because that can potentially open your eyes to maybe if you spend spontaneously, or if you spend on other certain things that we're going to get into actually here in just a second. So going on to this, what your action steps, so things you need to write down. Your action steps here is you need to gather your receipts, figure out your expenses, like I mentioned before. You need to calculate your monthly income. Again, whatever income it is that you bring in, if you have side hustles, if you have just your normal W-2 job, figure that out. But another addition to this, something that makes your budget very, very important is figuring out if your money is fixed or variable, right? So what this means is if it's fixed, that means you know that you will have that expense or income every month. It is expected. Okay, so for example, your mortgage or your rent, you know that it is going to be, let's say, $1,200 every month. So you know that is a fixed expense. Let's say that you get paid the exact same amount every 2 weeks. Then you know that is a fixed income. Those amounts really help your budget, and it really makes things easier because you can just type those numbers in or write those numbers in compared to variable expenses. So variable expenses and variable income means that it's not expected or it's not the same month by month. And so that does make things a little bit more difficult, and that's kind of what I was hinting at this last slide. Last slide was 1 month you might have a ton of weddings. Let's say it's May and you go to 5 weddings and you spend $1,000 on everyone's wedding gifts. But then the next month you have no weddings, and that $1,000 could be allocated in a much different place. So it's just something to really be aware of. So whether it's writing it down or on the apps or whatever it is that we talk about later, just be sure to keep in mind and to really watch if the expenses or the income is fixed or if it is variable. So let's just talk about a few quick budget examples. So if you have zero experience with budgets, here are just a few things that you may come across when you start doing your research for budgets. This is an example of a written budget. So you would write down what the income or expense is. So for example, your mortgage or your gas for transportation. You'd write down your budget, and you might write down the actual amount. So that's important because every month you may budget a certain amount, but it's actually kind of unlikely that you actually spend that exact amount. Let's say if it is on gas. Month by month, gas costs different. But if you budget $50 and you actually spend $48, then great, then you're under budget. But if you budget $50 and you spend $60, you might have to really look at the next month's budget and put some money aside more for gas, just as an example. This is an example of what you may see on a digital app. So there are apps we'll talk about later for budgeting, but this is something that you might see in regard to the layout of how it works. So you might see your budget of how much the numbers that are a little bit lighter gray. For example, on the groceries, $150 that this person had set aside. But then by now they have spent $46.27. So that's really nice. They can watch in regard to how much they have spent and how much they really should cap that spending on in regard to to make it so that they don't go over budget and they don't overspend. And when they overspend, it may mean that you have to start taking out, you might have to use your credit card. It means that you might have to take out loans if it's a big expense. I mean, the whole point is to really have control of your money and to prevent that overspending. Here's another example. Now, for some of you, I have seen a lot of women get into cash envelopes, and cash envelopes are super fun. If you're like that type A person and you really love organization, I would recommend checking out some cash envelopes. We'll just mention that a little bit later on. It's something I've tried. It is hard to be very tedious with it, and it requires you to spend almost everything with cash. So it's a hard one, but it definitely is within our budgeting category. It's fun, but definitely something to check out. So now that we've gone through step one, we briefed over what budgeting is, kind of mentioned what is budgeting, why budget, and a few just examples of budgets, right? So we're going to go into step two. We're going to learn a little bit more of how to budget and then give you more examples of different ways you can begin your budgets, different softwares and platforms. So in regard to budgets, here are a few different ones that we're going to cover. So the first one is pen and paper. And to be honest, this is where a lot of people start. I started with pen and paper. I quickly went into the different phone apps because it was hard when I got married, too many expenses, too many things. But pen and paper is really awesome if, again, you are type A, you really love organization. It is just really nice to have everything in nice, what they call budget binders. This is an example down in the comments below. And if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm going to post it down in the description. I do have a free budget planner that I give everyone. You just sign up for my email list and you get that immediately. What's really nice is you get your debt trackers, you get week by week note taking, step-by-step guides for like what to do next. And it's a really nice planner, and it truly, thousands of women have received their planner, and it is just something to get that head start, to get that little kick in the butt, and just to have a resource. Because in just a second here, we're going to be going into some other options, and I'd rather you have a free resource to start versus spending money up front when this whole point is to not spend a lot of money. So do check that down in the description below for that free budget planner. It is definitely worth checking out compared to going out and just buying planners and buying different workbooks and whatnot. So I wanted to go over some different options, right? So this next option, I want to talk about some printables and different Etsy options. So I'm actually going to go over here. We're going to talk about Etsy. Etsy is really, really popular to get some different budgeting books, budgeting templates, budgeting planners. Do really watch out in regard to the cost. You can get a ton of this stuff for free, as I'll mention in a little bit. But these are just some examples that came up here. There are a lot of like digital options. There are other ones where you can print off your budgeting plans. There are some little bundles where you can get a whole budget planner, which are really fun. I mean, I think it's fun, but I haven't gone over here on Etsy. I've honestly created some of my own. Side note, if you do join my email list, every now and then, usually about once a month, I do give out free templates, whether it be bill trackers, money spender tracking, money challenges. So I really do recommend getting that free planner anyway, because you'll get like free templates just like these every month. So just saying. Also, you'll see some cash envelopes. The cash envelopes, again, is another option. I haven't had much success, but there are a lot of women on YouTube who talk about cash envelopes and who are really awesome with it. So just something to consider. So yeah, so you can just scroll through Etsy. Things range from just a few bucks to going into the 20s and 30s. So really check that out as an option, but really realize that it may be digital or it may be something you print out. They're all very different, but that's one option. Another option is to go on to Pinterest. With Pinterest, there are a lot of good options for free printables, free worksheets. You might check out a ton of free ones. The one problem I will say with Pinterest is that you will likely get a lot of scattered stuff, because how it works is a lot of people will give you one free one, but then for you to get like the whole bundle for your bills and your expenses and your income, and you usually have to pay for it. So it may be a good place to start, but don't waste all your time. Don't waste all your time. Just find something. If you know you're not going to be good at writing it down, we'll talk about a few different options, but definitely scroll through. There are free options, like I said, but really consider that it's just an option. So let's keep going on. So those were like digital or written options, things that you likely will pay for, but you might spend a few hours scrolling through and finding different things. What I do now, and truly what has just been so easy for my husband and I, is through budgeting apps. So let me actually get right back out of here again. There are a few budgeting apps that I really recommend. So we have EveryDollar, Personal Capital, and Mint are the ones I personally have used. I haven't used any others. There are definitely many other ones out there. But I'll just show you really quick some of these different options. So if you've heard of Dave Ramsey is extremely popular for beginner budgeters, beginners at money. And they have a free app. I have used it. Nothing really wrong with it. My husband just wasn't a huge fan because another one we use has a little bit more, something specific with how we invest. But in regard to this, you can totally check these out on your own, but they're awesome. I enjoyed EveryDollar. I used it during my debt-free journey before I was married. So that's a good one to check out. Awesome for beginners. They have lots of good information, lots of good trainings and everything like that. Personal Capital, I use personally, and then my husband and I use the next one together, but Personal Capital is a really great one. I use it really for my investments, watching my retirement accounts, and really gauging my net worth. So this is a really nice one. I think it's really awesome for two reasons. First is that they do have the opportunity for you to project your retirement. It really analyzes your retirement. And then it also, just seeing if there's anything else on here, not really. And then it also has a really great online presence, online software, for example. So definitely another option to check out. It's free. I usually always recommend it. It'll be down in the comments or the description below. And then the one that I personally use with my husband and that we use most is Mint. And so Mint is a really great one as well. It's a free app that you can download, and for us, we are into rental investing, and so for us, it tracks your rental investments differently than the other apps, and so for us, it's a good option, but it doesn't mean that it's any better. It is another option, and it's free. That's what matters. I am all for free things. So as you can see here, you can totally scroll and go do your own research, but I figured I'd give you some options for you to research, for you to look at, so that you have some options, right? Might as well. Last one here is other options, right? Budgeting online. There are a lot of different options out there that are purely software based. So they may not have an app, it may not be something you write down, but it's actually software based. And honestly, all you have to do is just type into Google budget online, for example, and you can find QuickBooks, for example, Truebill. I've checked out Truebill before. There are a lot of different options. Just do your research, but again, I would just stick to whatever's easiest, something that, if to start out, is free, might as well. But those are options. Let's move on. For this step, your homework, or what you need to do, is again, research first what method you'd want to do. We're all totally different in how we learn and how we stay motivated. Is an app what you need? Maybe. Is something digital you can write on your iPad? Maybe. Are you the person where you need to physically write with a piece of paper and everything written on a binder together? Maybe. We're all different. Also, the next step is to then input all the stuff from step 1, which was income, expenses, variable and fixed information. Put it all into your budget. Link your accounts as well. So that's kind of another point. Some people get nervous in regard to linking your bank accounts or linking your investment accounts. All these apps, especially just the ones that I talked about here that I've personally used, they're 100% encrypted and secure, so you totally can link your bank account. And the reason why this is nice is it makes everything automated. With budgeting and with money management, automations is everything. What I mean is making other people or other things do it so that you have less to worry about yourself. And so all you have to do is link those accounts so that literally what it'll do, if you go and get some food at McDonald's and you use your card and you do nothing else, and the app can literally take it, recognize that you went to McDonald's, input it into your food category of your budget, and do the calculations and show you that you spent money in your food category, whatever it be. So it's just something that definitely saves time and is really nice. So I would recommend linking all of your accounts. And then lastly, the next point is to just begin tracking your money. You need to see what your net worth is. You need to see how much you're actually spending. You need to recognize that. That's the whole point of starting budgeting, right? Is to figure out what's going on. So let's go on to step 3. Okay. Step 3 is really figuring out the process of budgeting, understanding what to do now. Okay. So by now, if you're writing all your notes, by now you will have figured out income, figure out your expenses, really determine if things are fixed or if they are variable. Then you will have gone and figured out your method of budgeting. And remember that you can start something, you can download, like me, you can download an app and then decide, go down another one. We use 2 apps. You can do whatever you want. But now we're going to talk about a little bit more complex into how this works. And we're talking about budgeting methods. There are a lot of different budgeting methods. I've heard and used the 50-30-20, 70-20-10. There's a Dave Ramsey budget method. And honestly, a lot of people try to coin their own different types of methods, which is why there's an other section and there's the none section. I actually have gotten to the point where I've been budgeting for years, to the point where I don't need to use a budgeting method. I have it figured out exactly how much I actually spend on all these different budgeting categories. And so I kind of am in the none section. But for anyone starting out, I really recommend you do start out with one of these first 2. Or do a lot of research to maybe find a different one. So the 50-30-20 is amongst the most popular budgeting method. And all this means is how you allocate your funds. So when you know how much money is coming in, let's say that you have $4,000 coming in a month. You need to look at that money and say, okay, I'm going to split that money into 50%, 30%, and 20%. And then from there, allocate everything into all the specific things that you're going to buy or spend money on. So the 50% stands for your needs. This would be, as listed here, rent, food, minimum debt payments, for example, things that must be paid for, things that you must spend your money on. From there, the next 30% will go toward your wants. This is kind of what everyone is hopeful for, right? Everyone wants to go out to eat and have fun and go to bars. People want to go on vacations, like fun, your wants, right? Then the 20% for this method is for putting money into savings. Savings in 2 different ways. I talk about savings and investing. I'm all about investing, but this again would be for debt payoff, especially for those of you who do have a lot of debt. This method is all about 20% going into your debt, or if you are debt free, a lot of people say then you can go invest. Everyone's totally different, but this is an example. So I really liked this from frugalmomguide.com just as another example of a visual for how to allocate your money. So if you knew you had, again, $4,000 coming in this month, you would put $2,000 of that into your needs. And if you already recognize that you're not going to have enough money for your other stuff, that's when you start breaking it down and you really start looking, what can I not spend on in order to make it so that I don't overspend this money? Savings would be emergency funds, 401k, IRA, again, those investments. And then your wants could be vacations, all those things that I mentioned. Now, the Dave Ramsey budget method is a little bit more complex. If the 50, 30, 20 is too broad and not specific enough for you, I then recommend the Dave Ramsey budget method in regard to how it split things up. Giving, saving, food, utilities, transportation, health, all these different categories are categories that you likely are going to have, but you can definitely change things based off of your specific situation. It doesn't have to be exactly, which is why some of these are like 5 to 10%, 10 to 15%. It doesn't have to be exact. It's just essentially a cap telling you if you spend more than 10% on food or 15% on food, then you really should cut back and stop eating out or whatever it be. So again, another visualization in regard to the budget percentages so that you can kind of get an idea of how your money would be spread out. Now, like I said, you can find other options for your budgeting methods or your money allocations. I really recommend finding something at first though. Like I said, after you've been doing this for a long time, you have an idea of how this works and you don't need to follow one of the different percentage allocation methods. But as a beginner, it just makes things easier so you know that you're on track, so that you're following something that is proven and that you can stay on track. So let's go into step 4. Step 4, we're going to talk about the different ways to have a successful budget, different mistakes people make, and essentially how to make it so that you are successful, right? Budgeting tips for success. First thing is don't overcomplicate your budget. Kind of like that Dave Ramsey budget, it looks a little bit complicated and people may get really overexcited at first and try to make it so they allocate everything into really specific categories. I mean, I've even written articles on budget categories, like 50 different categories. You don't need to make it complicated, especially at first. The biggest thing is you don't want to have burnout. I've had burnout from a lot of things and I've definitely given up on budgets before because I just can't stick to them. And they're not motivational. So if anything, don't make it complicated. The 50, 30, 20 is so simple because you don't have to, if something's a need, you put it in the need category. If something's a want, you put it in the want category. That's it. You don't need to make it complicated. The second thing is to really focus on using this as an opportunity to build new habits. The reason being, it takes on average over 3 months of budgets, which typically, like I said, you do a budget one time a month, so for each month. But typically takes at least 3 budgets to be getting things correct, to be estimating correctly, because there are going to be a lot of expenses you'll forget. And that's just normal. It's normal depending on the season, depending on the month, depending on when your annual expenses for things like insurance come up. It will be different for everyone. But just focus on the fact that you're building a habit and it's about a process and you don't have to be perfect out front. The third one is to really practice with cash. This is huge for people who are beginning with budgets. Using cash is very widely known to make it easier for you to not spend more, to not overspend. So if you're going to the grocery store and you're pulling out hundreds, those hurt a lot more mentally and like emotionally than just pulling out your debit card or your credit card. So that's just a big principle within like the budgeting community, is to really try to practice using cash with anything that isn't on automation or things that you physically really can't, whether like a mortgage, for example. That would be kind of hard to do with cash. People do it obviously, but at least practice, whether it just be all your food, for example, or any of your entertainment. Play with cash. Number 4 is to really focus on your debt payoff and your savings. After you have practiced your budget for a few months, really start setting your goals. And this kind of goes into number 5 too. But you really need to figure out what your next goal is. Why are you doing this budget? Are you trying to pay off your money? Do you need to set up an emergency fund? A lot of people get 6 months to a year of emergency fund just in case they lose their job or an emergency happens. And so this is something to really have a goal in mind. You're not just having a budget to just have a budget. Are you wanting to save up enough money so you can stay at home and create your own side business? Whatever it be, have goals in mind. Don't just be trying to do a budget just to do a budget, because you know what happens. You're going to lose motivation and it's going to be really quickly that you'll stop. Here are a few quick tips in regard to having a lasting budget. So I really recommend, as I've hinted throughout this whole time, is to have a budgeting meeting every month with your spouse. So I say to create a budget every month. And what my husband and I do, and what's really common amongst the budgeting community, is to have a sit down budgeting meeting with your spouse one time a month, like the weekend before the beginning of the month. That's when you will sit down and plan out your budget. Now, this will take a little bit longer the first few times because, to be honest, you do have to spend the time to figure out your income. You do have to spend the time to figure out your expenses. But then after that, it becomes really quick. Typically, it's less than 10 minutes for me and my husband. We can sit down, quickly look over what our last month was. If we were under budget, over budget, if we had extra money come in, we had to spend extra, whatever it be. We quickly discuss. We figure out our plan for the next month. Typically month by month, when you have things figured out, it really shouldn't change much. Or all you have to do is take away something from one area and put it into another area if you know you're going to overspend on something. So definitely something to consider. Having a budgeting meeting is huge and absolutely recommended. If you don't have a spouse, I usually recommend getting an accountability partner. An accountability partner is someone, a friend, a family member, someone who can sit down so you can just stay accountable. Do FaceTime, 10 minutes. Let them know what your progress is. It's as easy as that. The next tip is to focus on one thing at a time. With all the things that we've even said today, you'll know through a little bit more research that there are a million different printables. There are a million different methods, options, apps, services, softwares that you can use to create a budget. Try one thing, stick with it for a few months, and if it just doesn't work, there are other options. Really keep that in mind, okay? Because you can get really unfocused really quickly because there are lots of shiny objects, lots of things to research, lots of things to print off, to buy, to get. Try to focus on the simplest right now just to get started. You have plenty of time to budget, like the rest of your life, to practice. Just find something now. Lastly, with this section, I really recommend practicing experimenting with more than one way to budget. Now, there are lots of different ways to budget. Okay, we've talked about different budgeting method with percentage allocations, but there are some like umbrella terms and like categories for budgeting. There are the cash envelopes, which we mentioned, which is a whole different like way to budget, but it's absolutely effective. It's awesome. Where you, instead of writing it out, you physically take envelopes that say food, mortgage or rent, gas and transportation, fun, and you put the money in there. And when the money's out, it's gone. Like, it's really effective. It's awesome. Something to check out. There's a zero-based budget, which is really popular as well in regard to when you allocate things out, you allocate every single penny that you'll earn. So it's not just allocating your money in general, but it is a very strict way to budget, something I really recommend beginners check out as well. And then, of course, like I said, they're written, they're digital, they're apps, they're softwares, lots of things, lots of different options. But really, don't just stick to the first one that you tried. There are always other ways that could supplement your budget. Maybe you do have your app, but then you also keep a expense tracker just on paper so that you can stay more accountable. You just get creative and figure out what works for you. Now, here are a few budgeting mistakes. The first one is forgetting first-time or one-time expenses. This is something that really creeps up on people and can make budgeting kind of frustrating and difficult. There are a ton of different annual or one-time expenses, whether it be a family wedding where you have to buy a really expensive gift, for example. Insurance, where you may have biannual or annual expenses. You may have different annual subscriptions. You might have different memberships, things that maybe one time or two times a year that all of a sudden come up and you have to fork up a few $100s, for example. That can be hard on your budget because a lot of times you don't estimate that and then it just kind of can screw things up. So really, really focus on when you have your monthly budget meetings with your spouse, sitting down and just thinking, what is coming up in this next month? Are there any one time or every now and then expenses that is going to happen that we need to account for? Another budgeting mistake is condemning your family for overspending. I really always try to keep this in here into this webinar because it is so true. If you are hyper focused on your budget and you're trying so hard to sacrifice, you're not going to get your coffee, you canceled your Netflix, you're doing all these things to make it so that you are saving as much money, whatever it be, but then your spouse or one of your kids spending like crazy, I really recommend that you try to get your family on board. It needs to be a teamwork situation, a whole family situation in regard to this budgeting thing. If it's just you, it will be a lot of pressure on you. So really just be aware that you might need to have some grace and you might need to really have some sit down conversations with everyone so everyone knows that your plan and what the budget looks like and what that plan is. And then our last budgeting mistake is not revising month by month. And this is very important. Every month when you look at your budget to see how you spent the past month and what money that came in, it's so important to revise what the next month will look like. If you just set up your budget and set up your allocations and everything, it will not be the same month by month. Christmas, December is very different than February or, April or whatever. Like it is very different. So definitely revise every month based on what is coming up and based off of how you spent. If for 3 months, you learned that you overspent on your budgeted food, you might need to budget more onto your food because it is just very hard to keep with that. Just an example. So with all that said, I want to say, what are you going to do today to get yourself one step closer to your goals? And maybe you don't even have any written goals. Maybe you just have this dream of wanting to get rid of your debt. Or maybe you just have the thought of, hey, I need to figure out my money. Like, what's going on? Money's just in there, but I don't know. What are you going to do today? I have given you a lot of actionable items so far that you can do today, and all it takes is one step. So really, you're one step away from getting just another step closer to your goal. And so for those of you who have stayed on with me, type down below, what is holding you back? Why haven't you budgeted before? What has been hard about a budget before? And why haven't you been able to keep with a budget or stay with a budget in the past? Put that down below. I'd love to check out some of your comments. So from there, I want to pivot just a little bit to talk about how the Woman's Money Playbook, or previously known as the Free Life Workbook, if you've seen that on my website, how the Woman's Money Playbook can help you immensely with this whole budgeting thing. Okay, so the Women's Money Playbook is a comprehensive workbook for women to learn how to budget, how to save money, and how to achieve some amazing financial goals. There have been some awesome women who have gotten this workbook and have just raved about how it has been so helpful. Caitlin, for example, says there's so much goodness in these pages, I can't even list it all. Okay, Teresa says, I absolutely love the workbook and it's just worth it just for the extra worksheets to keep your finances organized. So I want to explain, the Women's Money Playbook is essentially this organized workbook with activities, guides, trackers, information that takes your knowledge right now as a beginner and goes from point A to point Z in regard to helping you learn about money. So you learn about vocab, right? What's debt? What's an asset? What's a liability? Helps you by giving you all the little printables and trackers and everything you need for budgeting. So you get your bill trackers and your expense trackers, your income trackers. If you're doing things like a debt snowball payment, I have some of those included. So it takes you through that. And then it takes you into teaching you how to spend consciously, how to get more money through side hustles, teaching you what investing is, right? What's a Roth IRA? What is a 401k? What are 403bs? What on earth, is investing itself? Do I get an app like Robinhood, or do I do something different through my work? What do I do with all that? And those are all very legitimate questions. So as you continue to learn about money, then you'll learn about more complex things. Rental investing, investing for earning passive income, right? How to grow a business, all these different things for your journey as you continue to learn about money. And then finally, you learn about lots of different money habits of millionaires. You learn about how to contribute and to give so that you bless other people with your finances. It's an amazing workbook that I really recommend you check out. And I want to give you a really neat opportunity to get that today. So today I am giving you the opportunity to not only get the workbook, but a few different freebies. Okay. So the first freebie is a roadmap. And this is essentially like if the mom or the parent is the workbook, the child is the roadmap. It is like you can't separate them. It is a necessity essentially This roadmap is huge though. It is essentially taking every step that I take you along through the journey of the woman's playbook, money playbook, but then it maps out into his checklist. So if any of you are type A people like me, this is a necessity. It will literally list out every single step of what you need to do to learn about money. Like if you know nothing about money, you can't find this resource anywhere else. It is amazing. So amazing. So definitely something that you get as part of this bonus that I'm giving you today. The second free resource you get are cash freedom templates. So you know how I just talked about how cash envelopes are all the rage, but can be kind of difficult. You have to go buy cash templates and cash envelopes and all this stuff. I give you cash templates with this workbook, okay? So what's really nice about today's webinar, web class, is you get these cash envelope templates. And so you get a ton of different ones: food, groceries, transportation, mortgage, all those things that we talked about before, you get it here. And so it's just really nice to be able to practice with that without spending the extra money. The next freebie that you get is your future money guide. Now, it is pivotal. If you're gonna be starting any sort of money journey, paying off debt, trying to invest your money or figure out how investing works. Let's say that you just want to save up money for a vacation, okay? Having goals and knowing how to have effective short-term and long-term goals is so huge. How can you achieve goals if you don't have them written down? So this future guide is essentially organized templates of questions and different prompts that you can sit down with your spouse and your family to figure out what you want your life to look like 1 year, 3 year, 5 years plus down the road. This is so important because it takes the concepts of everything you learn in this workbook and it applies them into a more broader overall template, worksheets, whatever we want to call them. But it is so nice to have included. It is imperative. Okay. This next freebie, and yes, you literally get 4 freebies with this playbook. Okay. I kind of went overboard. There's just so much goodness, so many resources that I can give you guys that I just can't stop. Okay, so you get a printable vault. Now, if you're anything like me, you love printables. I love coloring. If you're type A, I think it's just type A people, I don't know. Coloring, writing things down, note-taking, trackers, guides. This printable vault, you get this, and it's just this massive not list per se, collection of all these different printables, anything that could be relatable to your life, right? If you're trying to save up for a house, there are printables for, like, as you can see on here, a color tracking sheet for a house. If you're saving up for a car, as you see on there, I mean, every category you could think of, it's in there, okay? It's just a vault of printables. And I include this because I know that as you go on through your financial journey, as you start learning about budgeting and you practice your budget and you start trying to pay off debt and you're trying to save up money for, again, vacations, a car, you're going to come across a lot of different things that people are trying to sell you. And that's going to be a lot of printables, trackers, things like these that you see on this page. You're going to see those. And they're going to try to charge you $2 to like $7 per thing. And this vault alone is worth almost $200 alone of just printables. So it's a massive value that you get with this. And so I really recommend checking out this playbook because you get this freebie and you cannot buy this anywhere else. So this is just a quick recap in case you forgot, or so you can write this down, or so you can screenshot it, or whatever it be. But today in this masterclass, if you take advantage of this opportunity, not only do you get the playbook at a massive discount, okay? So this playbook, again, has everything that you would need to learn about money as a beginner. Everything. Like, everything. And then you get the printable vault that we just talked about, the roadmap, so A to Z, point, and so you don't even have to, like, go through your workbook. You just need that roadmap to be like, okay, what's next? That makes sense. Okay, let's go do it. You go to your workbook and you go learn about it. Then you go do your actionable steps on the roadmap. Awesome. Like I have no words. I have no words of how like perfect these things all work together. And then you have your future guide, which you design your future. And then you get your cash envelopes, which you guys, you have to practice with. It is so good to prevent your spending, like overspending, to really get control of your money. So no joke, this is a total value of over $2,500. I mean, all of this stuff would be a huge amount of money. But the fact that you've stayed on here with me, I mean, I don't even know what our time is right now, but you've spent all this time with me today. And I am so grateful and so thankful that I am giving you all of this, literally all of this, for only $27. So again, this playbook is over 200 pages of just step-by-step guides of teaching you everything you need to know about money while giving you the fun activities and different brainstorming prompts and just everything. It's a workbook. It's an activity book. Like, it's not a textbook. It is fun book. Okay. Then you get to your bonuses, which are just invaluable. Invaluable. I went over the board because I just wanted to give you everything that you could ever want. Okay. You guys, I want to give you a huge thank you for sticking with me through this webinar masterclass so you can learn about budgeting. You have a ton of actionable steps that you can take right now to get going. But do realize there are so many things ahead that you need to learn. I recommend checking out emergency funds, checking out sinking funds. Those things are really important for your budgets, but I just don't have enough time to go through them today. But what you can do is check out some of my social media you see on here. I recommend the biggest one, which isn't on here, is YouTube. I have a YouTube where I am essentially covering all of the budgeting things. Right now I'm on this huge series of wedding budgets, for example. But anything you want to know about budgeting, controlling your money, money management, personal finance, investing, go check it out. It's on there and you will learn so much. But you can also check out my website, which is here on this page as well. On my website, if you don't have time to read or if you don't have time to listen and fight to find all these different videos, on my website, I have hundreds, literally hundreds of articles that I have written for you so that you can learn about money. Again, in investing, rental investing. Let's say you're a little bit down the road and you have learned about money and investing and you want to learn more. The more complex stuff is on there too. Let's say you just need to learn vocab. What's assets? Or what are assets? What are liabilities? It's on there. So go check out the website as well. Or if you just want to follow my journey and see what I'm up to, I'm on Twitter and I'm on Instagram. So again, check out the Woman's Money Playbook. You can see it in the comments below on this live, or you can check it out in the description below on the YouTube. And so thank you so much for coming today to learn about budgeting. I hope you learned a thing or 10 about how to get started with your new budget. Best of luck, and definitely shout out to me on social media so that we can connect.